winning quarterback threw the most touchdown passes in an NFL season?
So, as we're looking at this, I think Kemba wants me to go a variety of places. I'm going to go with the guy who's throwing a ton of interceptions as well. I'm going to go with Jameis Winston.
See, this is why this question is so devious, because Bobby knows we're about to talk about Jameis and Cam Newton, but the answer is Lamar Jackson. Both Cam Newton and Jameis Winston are on the list, but Lamar Jackson last year broke the record Cam had previously held. Chalk one up for Sneaky Hembo, who today was truly sneaky. And with that thought in mind, let's move to that subject, because two former #1 overall draft picks at quarterback are still free agents, Cam Newton and Jameis Winston, both looking for new teams. Our buddy Booger McFarland had some thoughts about where Jameis and Cam should go. If you follow Booger on Twitter, if you don't, you should be. He tweeted, couple ideas. Who's going to be the Bridgewater for this year's Saints? Taysom is going to be the jack-of-all-trades guy again. Why not Jameis? Also, Jacksonville really comfortable with only Minshew? Why not bring in a veteran like Cam Newton? So, I like those. Booger, I'm going to start with you. Why do you like, because the Saints are obviously the playoff team in this, a Super Bowl contending team. Why do you like the idea of Jameis going there?
Well, Greeny, number one, I think Jameis still has a lot of talent. And if you look at the way the Saints run their offense, if Taysom Hill is still going to be that kind of wildcat guy, he can play quarterback, he can play tight end, he plays special teams, you really don't want your backup quarterback doing that. So who's going to be the true backup? Very similar to how Teddy Bridgewater was last year, because when Breeze got hurt, Bridgewater came in and started, not Taysom Hill. So they need a true backup down in New Orleans, and I would love to see Sean Payton get his hands on Jameis Winston. Winston has a ton of talent. You don't throw for over 5,000 yards in the National Football League without talent. He just needs someone to coach him up and help him with the turnovers. Why not Sean Payton, who's regarded as one of the greatest offensive minds in the National Football League? So I would love that fit for a number of reasons, primarily because I want to see what Sean Payton can do with Jameis Winston, and he would help them fill the Teddy Bridgewater role from last year.
Honestly, I love it. I don't know if that's where Jameis's head is right now or not, but I would love it. Bobby, what do you think?
Well, the problem is I think he's got to go somewhere and he's got to be able to accept a backup role, and it can't be with a traditional coach who comes from, the Bill Parcells and Belichick tree of wanting to hold on to the football and not turn it over. If you look at Jameis last year, 6 interceptions on opening drives, absolutely terrible, 7 pick sixes, and Tampa had a good defense, but they were on the field more than anyone else. They had more drives than any other defense that you're going to see. They had a great defensive efficiency, but the problem was they were exposed so much on short field. So if you look at this, he's got to go someplace to accept a backup role. You kick around Jacksonville. I don't think they're probably trying to win. I've heard people throw out Pittsburgh. That would make some sense to me, but he's got to have his head in the right space to be able to accept a backup role, because we've never seen him do it before.
Then let's turn our attention to Cam Newton, who also he became a free agent much later in the game than others did, just being released the other day. And there are some people out there who are kind of lobbying to try and bring in Cam. I can show you Leonard Fournette posted a picture of himself with Cam Newton trying to recruit Cam maybe to come to Jacksonville there. And then we also have one from Chargers quarterback Tyrod Taylor posting a picture of himself working out with Newton. So, Bobby, I'll start with you here. What makes sense for you as a good fit, a good landing spot for Cam Newton right now?
If you look at Cam Newton, his 2018 season, the first 8 games, it was really good. He threw about 19 touchdowns, 4 or 5 interceptions. That's very efficient football. That is winning football. And if you look at the LA Chargers, the team that they have assembled, they're ready to win now. They have a number of big-time guys coming up on contracts in the next 2 years. So they're going to be trying to move away to make sure that they can win in this window. And even if you draft a young quarterback, I still think Cam gives them the best option to do that. And their head coach, Anthony Lynn, likes a running quarterback, a guy that can move around. And while Cam may not be the athlete he was 5 or 6 years ago, he's still a threat with his feet when healthy.
All right, Booger, you brought up the Jaguars. Why does that make sense for you for Cam?
Well, because I don't think anybody in Jacksonville is really hell-bent on going into the season with Gardner Minshew as the only guy. I get it. He's a character, the George, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're actually trying to be competitive, you need someone there, I think, at least at the very minimum, to push Gardner Minshew. And if you're Cam Newton, you got to feel good about your chances if you're healthy and the foot is right. If you can't beat out Gardner Minshew, then you're probably not going to start for a lot of teams in the National Football League. So I think Cam needs to play. Unlike Jameis, who I think needs to sit back and learn, I think Cam is at a point in his career he needs to go and be on the field. And the Chargers have kind of said they're going with Tyrod Taylor and probably going to draft a quarterback. So if that door is closed, then why not Jacksonville? He can go and compete and be ready to play if they need him.
All right, so a lot of what you said there made sense. But one of the things you said was if they're trying to be competitive. And with that thought in mind, I have Dan Orlovsky standing by, and I want to bring Danny into this conversation because you brought something up to me earlier this week off the air that I'd love you to bring on the air that I think will inform this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, the Jacksonville Jaguars are tanking. Am I the only one who thinks that their front office has decided to look forward to 2021? I mean, if you look back at really mid-October of last season in the trade of Jalen Ramsey for 2 first-round picks, one this year, one in 2021, and then a 4th-round pick. Then you move to Nick Foles this offseason, a guy that you just gave $88 million to, and you decide to move him for a 4th-round pick. And then you move Calais Campbell for a 5th-round pick, and then AJ Bouye for a 4th-round pick. So all of your best players that you decided 2 years ago were going to be the backbone of an AFC championship run, you've decided to trade away and acquire picks. And so this team, or at least this front office, to me has made it very clear. 2020 is going to be a season where they have one goal: to try and acquire the first pick of the 2021 draft so they can draft Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson, Greeny.
And so let's talk quickly about him, because it's not just about tanking in a vacuum. This is a quarterback. How would you describe the way you think evaluators view Lawrence as a prospect?
Once in a generation. He will be the highest rated and the most sought after prospect at that position since Andrew Luck. In many ways, talent-wise, flawless. He's big, he's athletic, he's smart. He's got a live arm. He can make every type of throw that you need. Deep ball, ball that needs to be put on a rope, touch ball, out-breaking routes, in-breaking routes, incredibly hardworking, humble, intelligent, like everything that you want in a quarterback. They're going to look at Trevor Lawrence and say, not only is he good at it, he is great to elite at it. And that's why the Jaguars, and I know you're going to hate this, it makes sense to do what I think they're doing, to go get that #1 pick to secure Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I don't hate it. It makes sense. I totally agree with you. And until they stop incentivizing losing in sports, teams are best served doing it. And there's no better time to do it than when a guy this good is available. Booger, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely could be a possibility, but I think they could do both. I mean, you could sign Cam Newton, and he's not going to require a big, hefty contract, so you can still, quote-unquote, tank, but why not kick the tires on Cam Newton? Bring him in, let him compete. It's not going to cost you a ton of money, and guess what? If it fails, you can still be hopefully in a position to draft Trevor Lawrence. We talked about the Miami Dolphins tanking for Tua. The Miami Dolphins came out, and Brian Flores said, you know what? We're not tanking. We're going to go out and win. They were competitive. Their fan base was kind of happy. And now you look at a team that's set up with the 5th overall pick, and I think they're in the prime position. Unlike a lot of people who think 3 is the spot for Tua, I think the Miami Dolphins at 5 feel really comfortable. They can stand pat and get Tua Tagovailoa at 5, and they didn't even have to tank if you go back and look at the end of last season, because they were very competitive in a lot of their games.
Hold on, I have to stop you there, because it's not where we were planning to go, but you're the first person I've had say that. Let's focus on that a minute. You do not believe Tagovailoa goes earlier than 5?
Well, Greeny, here's the thing. Everyone says at 3, okay? Why would the Detroit Lions get rid of Matthew Stafford? I keep hearing people say the Lions and Tua Tagovailoa. I think the Detroit Lions feel really good about Matthew Stafford. You get rid of Slay, it makes sense to get Jeff Okudah, the corner there. I would say this: if there's a team other than Miami at 5, let's say the Chargers behind Miami, let's say the Chargers want Tua. The Chargers would then have to come up above Miami,
right,
because I think Miami at 5 would take Tua at 5. Now, if Miami gets a feeling that that Los Angeles wants to come up, then maybe you have to move up to 4. But I think the Dolphins feel really good, Greeny, about being there at 5 and thinking Tua will be there, because I don't think that the 4 teams in front of them, let's say those 4 teams stand pat, I don't think those 4 teams are taking Tua Tagovailoa.
That's fair, but we have been speculating all along that someone will trade up to 3 and maybe even 2 to get to a Bobby. I haven't had you on since we've been talking about this. Do you think that when if the Dolphins pick 5th, that Tua will still be there?
He could be, but they'll have to go up to get him. But that going back to the Cam Newton conversation, what we were talking about, bringing him in, if he did what Ryan Fitzpatrick did for the Dolphins last year, that's why we're talking about this right now and the Dolphins having to move, because they played well enough that they won enough games that they're picking at 5 instead of picking at 1 or 2. And so if they were really bad, they'd have the 1st or 2nd pick. They'd have their choice. That's not what Jacksonville wants to do. And I do ultimately think the Dolphins will go up because they believe he's their guy and they do not want to get jumped.
All right, there's a lot there. Dan Orlovsky, thank you for jumping in, my man. Good to see you. Best of the family. We'll check in with you again next week. Meanwhile, my favorite athlete of all time right this minute, and it's everybody's, and there were so many who were doing what they can during this time, but Drew Brees and his family have really gone above and beyond. Maybe you saw this yesterday. Drew Brees and his wife Brittany announcing that they're committing $5 million to the state of Louisiana in order to help get their communities, quote, through this tough time. That's extraordinarily well done by Drew. And again, so many in and outside the sports world are doing what they can to help, but that is above and beyond. Tonight, family movie night presented by Target on ESPN and the ESPN app. The movie is The Rookie, starring Dennis Quaid, based on the true story of Jim Morris, who in 1999 went from high school physics teacher to Major League Baseball's oldest rookie in 30 years. It starts at 8 Eastern tonight on ESPN. Coming up, a college football national champion is crowned in January, but the season starts much earlier. You'll hear what Notre Dame coach Brian Kelly thinks is the date they need to start. Next.